grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We about to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brandon T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brandon Thayer said, is your ex drinking buddy? Brandon Thayer said, is your ex drinking buddy? Brandon Thayer said, is your ex drinking buddy? Brandon Thayer said, is your ex drinking buddy?
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do. Hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, and reminisce about crazy old stories. I am sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do. Hang out with the guests and reminisce about the good old days. Most weeks I will be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, comedian Luke Thayer.
That's me. That's me.
You.
That's my portion
That's
of the
you.
show, yeah.
What's up, man?
Just surviving.
Surviving.
Yeah, looking to thrive eventually, but survival is all I'm worried about at the moment.
Perfect. Plug everything up front. I do this every episode. We'll plug everything up front, and then on the back end, let everybody know where they can find you, social media, website, the whole deal.
Sure. Yeah, well, right away, just pause the podcast and go at Comedian Luke on all social media platforms. Follow, write me a message, whatever you want to do.
Do you do the TikTok?
It's also at Comedian Luke.
Yeah.
For TikTok, but I definitely am not.
I'm so bad at it.
I've put some sketches out there. I was hired for a little bit to write and make some sketches, like these 1-minute sketches. Obviously, it's TikTok, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be super long. And they tried to hire me again. It's just I've been busy with some other stuff, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to invest the time for that. Which is the reason that I'm here with you instead of like doing a theater, right?
Do you want to plug the show or anything like that, or you got albums out? Let everybody know.
I do have an album available, which you can all the places that you can normally get albums.
I'm going to link it in the show notes. So
yeah, you can get it on iTunes. You can. You cannot get it on Pandora right now or Spotify. There's been a little bit of a contract thing going on with my record label and those places.
Yeah, we've had a couple comedians on who are going through that right now.
Yeah, so you can still purchase it though, and if you want, you can email me and we can work out comedianluke@gmail. We can work out a little thing where I'll sign a physical copy of a download card. And I put a little message. Usually I sell those after shows, but I can also do that for you through the United States Postal Service.
Perfect. Keeping the USPS in business.
Somebody has to, right?
Well, tell everybody, it's your first time on the show. We know each other from different shows around the city, but tell everybody kind of to get to know you. You've been doing comedy for a little while. You've been in New York since 2005, I believe. Is what you told
2005.
Me, right?
I think that was when I first moved here. I just started comedy in Indiana. I was doing the open mics there, and my first little bit in comedy was stand-up, sketches, improv, all of that kind of stuff. So I was kind of doing everything you could possibly do in the comedy realm. Throw it all at a dartboard, see what sticks. And then at some point, maybe 5 or 6 years into all of that, I decided I needed to focus. If I want to be great at one thing, it's going to have to be one thing. You can't do all of those. You can't juggle all of them. So I focused just on the stand-up then, and then things started to take off from there.
When you moved to New York in 2005, were you doing all of those things?
I was doing all of it. So
how far were you into comedy in Indiana before you moved to New York?
1 year.
Oh, so you literally were like
I was brand new. So I went up and there was, I don't think it exists anymore, but there was a theater called Improv Olympic or IO in Chicago. Okay. So I would drive from, Indianapolis area to Chicago every Saturday, take classes there.
Is this during high school, after college?
This is after college.
Okay.
And so then I also was doing stand-up. I took a job at the local comedy club, which this club's barely hanging on. But at the time, it was a big deal. Yeah. They had 2 clubs in Indianapolis. One of the clubs had Tuesday through Sunday shows. That combined, I think they had 15 or 16 shows a week.
Wow.
I think they are down to 2 shows a week, one club. It's one of those things where it's just like obviously there's been pandemic issues. There's been comedy club bubble burst a little bit.
Yeah.
But also it's not the most well-run place ever, and I think sometimes people use some of the funds that were supposed to go for the business into their own pocket.
Yeah,
so,
we've all seen that before. When you said you worked there, what were you doing? The door tickets?
I was doing the door. I was an usher. So I seated people. That's all I did, basically. I'd run some food, so I stood there and I got to watch the show every week. And so I saw lots of comics coming through. Probably the biggest names that I saw during that year were Harlan Williams. Was like that. I was just absolutely starstruck by Harlan Williams, right?
Yeah.
So he's at the time big from Dumb and Dumber, Something About Mary. That's how I think most people would know him. Now, having a daughter, he also does this cartoon called Puppy Dog Pals, which she likes.
Oh, really?
But for me, it was that Dumb and Dumber generation. So we were so starstruck by him. He was super nice. He invited us all to go down to the bar downstairs, hang out. And what we did, he was at one pool table playing by himself, and all of the staff was at another one. We're like too afraid to actually go play with him.
Yeah.
It probably depressed.
He's like, hey, guys, I want to play pool.
I know. And also tells you what my mindset was at the time, that Harlan Williams was like the biggest star I could possibly ever imagine speaking to. And now that I've been in comedy and, we just did a show at the Cellar together. You go, oh, I'm around this stuff all the time. I was just around Chris Rock last night.
Yeah.
And we are not friends. we did not speak, but we were.
But you're in the same room.
We're in the same thing, doing the same stage, doing all of that. And so I saw Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Mark Curry.
Okay.
That was a TV show back when I was a kid, and he came through and did the club. And Kevin Pollak. I think those are the three biggest stars that I knew at the time or met at the time when I was there.
And so were you, after the year, because as you had already mentioned, you were kind of juggling a bunch of different things. After that first year, were you just like, I'm going to New York because you had a passion for it? Or what did you end up going? What did you go to college for?
Psychology.
Okay. So you're completely... I didn't know if it was like theater or entertainment or anything like that. So
no. And this thing, I'm from Indiana. So
where did you go to college, if you don't mind?
Indiana University.
Okay.
So if you happen to be watching the video, I'm actually wearing an Indiana University T-shirt right now. But it's Indiana. Even though there have been several giant showbiz people come from Indiana. Michael Jackson is from Indiana.
I did not know that.
David Letterman, if you want to stick to the comedy realm, is from Indiana. John Mellencamp, there are people from Indiana. In fact, even from my era, there have been people from Indiana that have gone on to show business things. Jim Gaffigan, actually.
I was going to say Gaffigan.
He's older than me, but he is also from Indiana. And Shasir Zamata is from Indiana. My wife, Abby Crutchfield, is from Indiana, who she's done some TV shows and had her own show a couple times.
Miss Pat, is she from Indiana?
Miss Pat is from Indiana.
Okay.
She's after I left.
Yeah.
But she is also from Indiana. So there's but prior to me actually getting into comedy, David Letterman left Indiana before I was born.
Yeah.
So it's like it never computed, and especially when you're a kid. When you're a kid, anybody that's like 2 years older than you is old.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah.
If you're a freshman in high school, a senior is that is an adult compared to you. You don't hang even. And so David Letterman being 30 or 40 years prior to that, whatever it was, it wasn't that long before, but at least 20 or 30 years, it didn't seem real. So show business did not seem real.
In Indiana.
It just seemed like the most you could ever hope for. I was a barista in high school, and the local sportscaster came in and got a coffee from me. And I thought that was as close to show business as I will ever be. Jeff George, who was the number one pick in the NFL in 1990, he went to my elementary school and my high school, but he was, 10, 15 years older than me or something like that. But he came back one day in my elementary school and walked the halls, and we're like, that's Jeff George,
that's crazy.
NFL player. And so that's as close as you get to show business or seeing stuff on TV. And so everybody else, every stand-up comic that ever lived that I was passionate about, my first influence into comedy was Bill Cosby, which,
Okay.
that's where it ends. That's the only influence is comedy where it laid with him. But that was the only one I was allowed to watch because, I grew up, my dad's a preacher, which kind of is going to lead us into some of these, like why I'm not much of a drinker and drugs and things, is that my dad's a preacher. And so I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of things.
What kind of preacher, if you don't mind my asking?
So,
like Baptist, Hellfire and Brimstone, or like New Age kind of like community
closer
center?
Closer to the Baptist.
Okay.
So it was a non-denominational Christian church, which it's kind of boring to get onto all of that
stuff.
Yeah,
but I didn't wanted to know how severe the strictness was.
More from the evangelical side.
Got it.
So like we didn't have all of the same rules, but like the communities we were in, an example was a lot of people didn't celebrate Halloween.
Okay.
My dad actually, he liked Halloween, let us do it, but
he's like, it's okay.
He did. He was always kind of like, let's just don't talk about that. Not to like, more than to not offend people.
Yeah.
It wasn't like hide this so nobody knows. It was more of like, you don't want to offend other people in the community. So, but they would they'd have like a harvest party instead of having, an actual
Halloween party.
And so, like all the costumes had to be Bible characters.
I got you.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so growing up that way, Bill Cosby was the only one that I was actually even allowed to watch as a child. So I saw Himself. That would have been the first comedy special I ever saw in my life would have been that. And then a little bit later, I was allowed to we watched Seinfeld together. So
Seinfeld was okay.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Okay.
And we watched a special, and this is my dad's critique of Jerry Seinfeld.
So you mean, I don't mean to interrupt, but you mean Seinfeld the comedian, not Seinfeld the show?
Both. I was allowed to watch both of those things. And so, and as well as Cosby, I was allowed to watch the Cosby Show, and I was allowed to watch Himself. So because those both were stand-up comedians and some of the greatest of all time, there's crossover. The entry point was through their TV shows, but then we saw the specials. Yeah. And so my dad's critique of Seinfeld was, I think at one point, Jerry Seinfeld, and I'm telling you for the last time, says the word damn. And my dad goes, oh, he's so funny if he could just not be dirty. Like, so I just wish he hadn't done that. And so that's the kind of environment
and it makes perfect sense. The reason I asked about the Seinfeld show thing was because I dated a girl in high school whose family was very conservative. Mm-hmm. Like all of her brothers were Marines, and like the dad was very like, we go to church on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday kind of thing. And I remember I grew up watching Seinfeld. My dad loves Seinfeld. So I remember one day we were all sitting in their living room and we're just flipping through the TV and they're like, oh, nothing's on. And I was like, Seinfeld's on. And the dad was like, I don't know. And then we put it on, and then it was the scene where Elaine is in the bathroom and she's begging for toilet paper from the next stall. Yes. And he goes,
Spare Square.
Yeah, Spare Square. And he goes, this is why I don't watch this garbage. And I was like, what? This is... So when you said, I was like, wait a second. I remember being around like more conservative kind of people, and they're like, no, this is blasphemous. Yeah. But you got away with it. You were able to watch it.
Yeah. My dad's an interesting guy because he's also an old dad. Yeah. So I have siblings that are almost 20 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
And so I came along, and this is actually, I think it's going to be the title of my Dry Bar special. They haven't confirmed it yet because it hasn't come out. But I'm a special gift from God.
There you go.
And so because people are like, you're an accident. Like, no, I'm a special gift from God. And so I came along much later. So he was a much stricter dad for them.
Yep.
Than for me.
Me and my twin sister are the youngest out of 4.
Yes.
So it's the same kind of thing where like my older brother ends up getting a PhD from Cornell and like had more, I would say, more rules and stuff. Because I have jokes. You heard the bit about my mom being the cool mom, and my older brother and sister are like, when was that?
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this was after you guys were gone, and like she was kind of over it.
Yes. It's my brother has a PhD.
Oh, really?
So he's a doctor of psychology.
Okay.
He's had his own businesses. I have a sister that's older than him. She has 6 kids, 6 girls. Then I have another sister. So out of them, it's sister, brother, sister. Now, the youngest of those, that sister, they were already saying that about her. Like, she got away with everything. She was the baby. And then I came along 15 years after her.
Okay.
And so I think I've got not just a mellowed version of my dad. I think I got almost a grandparent of my dad.
Yeah.
Right? And he was still strict, and I still was afraid of him to some degree because, I don't know that dads are like this anymore. I'm certainly not this kind of dad for my daughter, I don't think. Dads used to be scary.
Yeah.
Like, just because I think they were the disciplinarian ones. So it wasn't like I was afraid he was going to hit me or anything. It was just more of like, you knew dads meant business.
Yeah, because that was my whole thing was I now have a great relationship with my dad. But growing up, I remember because I was a destroyer of things, like breaker. And it was just I'm a bull in a china shop. Yeah. But I just broke things, which is why when I found football, they were like, oh, you're good at hurting things. And it's just a weird thing. Like, I feel like it's always bad luck, or I'm always dropping stuff. I'm always running into things. And because I'm so big, when I do that, things break. And I remember the same thing you're saying. I was never worried my dad would just saw off and hit me just randomly. But I remember I would break something and I'd be like, ah, shit.
Yes.
Because then I had to go hey, Dad. But it also speaks credit to them because it's also, I was the kind of person where if I did something, I would own up to it and be like, hey, Dad, I broke this. And I just remember same thing. I would be like, this is not going to go well.
Yeah.
I would be scared, nervous, this isn't going to go well.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate to that. And my dad, if he was listening to this, he'd be like, I love that story if he could have just kept it clean. It is I was a liar, is what I was.
Oh, you were?
And it's very specific lies, though. It was all about homework. So
yeah, I did lie about that.
Yeah,
all the time.
I did not want to do any homework.
Look at us having things in common.
Yes, and so I would just tell him I did my homework.
Yeah,
and he never checked. He never said, "Let me see it. I want to." He's like, "Okay, I'll believe you." I think that's the point he was, and he trusted it. Now, up through 5th grade, didn't matter. I was a bright enough kid that, I figured out.
Do it on the bus.
Do it on the bus, do it all that. I'd be writing, trying to fill in answers as we're all passing to the front. But then 5th grade, something happened where it's I ended up getting some D's because I just was not turning in even homework.
Yeah.
I was whatever the teacher's philosophy was that maybe the moment you got into class, you had to hand
it in right as you walk in. Yeah.
And I think that must have changed the way I could do, because then I couldn't do it at my desk while other subjects were going on. And so I got a D, and he was like, this is not unacceptable. You're not turning in your homework. So that can never happen again. Okay. I was scared. And that was the very last grading period of the year. Then first grading period of 6th grade, I think, I got an F, and he because I didn't turn in homework again. And then it was just nuclear meltdown. And then I was on a roll the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Because it was the meltdown of I'm taking everything. I'm checking your homework every night. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. And so, but right prior to that report card coming out in 5th grade, and this goes back to even having this Christian upbringing, I went into my dad's bedroom. And they had just probably gone to bed. So it's maybe 9, 10. No, it's probably 10 or something like that. And I said, I need to confess something. Because I knew the report card was coming out the next day.
Yeah.
I didn't do my homework. And he goes, oh, okay, no problem. Thanks for telling me, And he went to sleep. And I felt this burden relief. Oh, I told him.
Yeah.
And then when he got the report card.
That was smart. Wait until he was in bed.
Yes. Well, when he also didn't get what I was saying. He thought I didn't do homework that day. And so he didn't realize it's I've never done homework.
No, overall,
yes,
ever.
I've never done homework, ever once. And so when he got the report card, he was like, what? I go, well, I told you I didn't do homework. He goes, I thought you meant that night. You're so that's the kind of lies I would put out there. Is I would, just for my own personal benefit, is that I didn't want to do the work. I just wanted to play. I wanted to live in my own imagination, and I didn't want to do the worksheets and all of that.
See, that was growing up. That was my biggest thing, was I hated busy work.
Yes.
So when I actually did better in college than I did in high school, because in college, because I played sports, they were like, oh, you can take whatever classes you wanted. And so originally I went for business. took one political science class as like a elective or whatever, and I fell in love with it. And I was like, I'm changing my major. Like the first 2 weeks my freshman year, I changed my major to political science. And then I was able the next semester to get in all these like 3,000 and 4,000 level courses. So I ended up taking junior and senior level courses as a freshman, and I loved it because they're like, you don't have to show up. You're paying for the class. We have 2 midterms and 1 paper, like a dissertation, like a 20-page paper. That's it. 2 or a midterm, a final, and a paper. And I actually did so much better because I showed up to class because I liked the subject, and I would take notes, and then I would just crush the tests, and then that was it. And then when I was like a junior in college, they were like, oh, you have to take these prereq classes. Like, you have to. And I wasn't playing football anymore, so I just got lumped into all these like overflow classes. And it was, 1 page every single night on like 2 chapters and I'm like, we're back to high school shit. Yeah. And I'm like 21 now, like 2021. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And that's when I was drinking a lot at the time. So that's when I started to fall off. Yeah. But it was the same thing in high school and middle school. It's like, I don't want to do busy work. Like they were always like, oh, he's such a good test taker. It's like, because that's the stuff. That's what we're trying to do.
That's what I was a great test taker.
Yeah.
I got great grades on the test because I also like just in general growing up, my learning style was I would listen and I could pay attention to what the teacher said and I would retain it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to read all of the chapters. I didn't have to go through and do all the worksheets and everything.
Yeah.
I just retained it.
Same thing. Yeah.
The only thing I had growing up that I was really terrible at, and no matter what practice I put in, was spelling. And
me too.
Yeah. And as an adult, like literally like within the last year, I took a test online for dyslexia and it came out. This was they have like a range of things, and it came out very dyslexic. I was like, is that a category? It's just very. Like, you are super dyslexic. So I don't know if that's true because I haven't gone to a professional with that, but I've always had issues with spelling, and even now, like Google will just. I give up. I don't know what you're trying to say.
The same thing happens to me. Is now I use the speech to text. I have to. Because I'm like, I have no idea how to spell
You might be
this.
also dyslexic.
Maybe. That would make a lot of sense why I was so good at listening and like taking notes. Mm-hmm. But when it came to like reading and homework and stuff, I was like, and I just throw it in the trash.
Yes. We might be learning something about you.
There we go.
Forget the drinking stories.
Yeah, let's talk about
dyslexia. Yes. It would explain a lot. And now I think because I was in the gifted and talented of things, like science and social studies.
Yeah, I took IB in high school. Yeah. It's like the hardest classes in the world.
I was literally in the remedial class. Like they would put me in with the kids that I'm like, I don't even know if they know how to talk. Like, why am I in this class? And so I think that if I was in elementary school now, they would go, there's something off here. Yeah. That he's so
good at this, but so bad at that.
Yeah. They probably would go, we need to test for dyslexia here.
Yeah. Nowadays they would. And that's the interesting thing too, is because spelling was an actual grade up through up until middle school, I want to say. And I used to always get A's and B's everywhere and then D's in spelling.
Yes, me too. We're like parallel paths here.
Cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. And so I remember the spelling test and the anxiety with that. And I wouldn't even be close. That's the thing. I'd be throwing in letters, and I remember trying to they're like sound
visualize,
visualize, and I'm like, I'm sounding it out in my head, but it's just a jumble of letters.
Yeah,
and so,
there's a really funny comic who is it? Is it Phil? Who was he's talking about being dyslexic, and they're like sound it out, and that's like. It's like basically telling someone in a different language, like, well, how do you not get this? It's like, I don't get it. Like,
yes.
It doesn't matter how fast or slow I say it. Like, I don't get it.
Absolutely. And that's, I wasn't super great at foreign languages either. And so I don't know, I took a lot of German.
Did you?
Yeah, I took, because in high school we had to. So
yeah, you have to take a language. It's the same thing in Florida.
I think I took maybe 3 or 4 years in high school. And then I also in college, they said you had to take languages. So I think I took 2 or 3 years of German in college as well. And it never clicked.
Never?
Never. I could get, a B in the class.
Yeah.
But that's because I took so much German.
Yeah.
And I was still at the lower levels of German. It wasn't, I had friends that.
You go back into German 1 after 4 years in high school? You go back into German 1?
I went back into German 1. And so it was kind of like, well, at first I was like, you know what? I want to take Italian. And my roommate at the time goes, you need to, because I had a little different story with the college stuff. You're like, oh, immediately I did well.
Yeah.
I was a basketball player, but I went to Indiana University. I wasn't going to be playing basketball for Indiana.
Did you try to walk on?
Not even close. No, it's like, I do have a family member that did walk on, but like it's a very high level.
Yeah, it's the Hoosiers.
Yeah, like we literally went to the national championship game my senior year. So it's like, it's a very high level basketball. So I got to play with the team a little bit, and I also learned, wow, they were definitely a level beyond me.
I say that all the time. When I went to FAU, I got there, and it's still a Division I school in Florida, in South Florida. So I got there, and I was like, oh, this is not what I thought we were going to be doing. No, these are grown-ups.
Yes, I remember, like, because I'm 6'2", which is not incredible. I'm more of guard height. So I'd be like 3 and D is what they would call me now. 3 and D. And I just shooting a 3, and there was this guy, Jeff Newton, that was on the team at the time. And he picked it out of the air when he was at the free throw line. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to.
It's not goaltending as long as it's going up.
Yes. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to. I would really have to, like, and I worked on my release to get it even quicker. Yeah. I've always had kind of a quick release, but for shorter guys, it doesn't, I was quick for that. Then it was like, oh, I'm playing a 7-footer and just watching him.
10 feet when he puts his hand in the air.
He just pluck it out of the air. And I'm like, he's not even close to me. Like, he wasn't like he was standing right up on me, guarding me. He was back 5 feet and picked it out of the air. And I was like, okay, I won't be playing here. And so when I went to college, I still had the habits of a high school academic performer, which was I could do the work during school. I didn't have to do the homework at home.
Yeah.
We had study halls and things like that. I could get it all done there. And so I get A's and B's, and I would take very good tests. And so I kind of just coasted through high school that way. I was in the top 10 of my class, not top 10 number, top 10%.
Okay.
Just doing that, right? And I also went to a very bad high school in terms of, like, we started out with, I think, 560, 590, something like that, students my freshman year, and then graduated like 350 or something.
Okay.
Like half the class either dropped out, transferred, was in jail.
Yeah.
Just
gang. Shouts out Indiana.
They're come back for a second senior year, that kind of stuff. And so when I went to college, I was playing basketball at the rec center, just that kind of stuff, 2 to 6 hours a day.
Oh, wow. You loved basketball.
I did, yeah. And I would be just doing that. And
do you play in any of the leagues up here?
I have, but it's hard as a comedian because they tend to, like, play at night a lot. So it's like, or on the weekends when it's like I'm working. So I play a little bit on Saturdays now. I used to play at the YMCA during the day before the pandemic, like 2, 3, 4 times a week.
Oh, wow.
But I'm a good Y player. At least I was before the pandemic.
So in college, you're playing 2 to 6 hours a day?
Yes. And my grades just were in
plummeted.
The toilet. I was on academic probation my first semester.
Oh, wow.
Like, immediately. It was like, oh, if you don't improve the next semester, we're going to kick you out of school.
God.
And which, having been decent at academics the whole time, I was like, oh, I really got to buckle down. And then I was like, is similar thing as what the lying thing in elementary school is. Once the hammer was laid down, it was like, oh, now I'm on academic honors the next semester.
Okay, so you were able to kind of be like, okay.
Yeah, I definitely turned into I always was waiting to the last minute to do the stuff, but I would get the stuff done. Whereas before, like, I even had to learn things like don't schedule an 8 a.m. class. Yeah,
that's very important. A lot of people they think, oh, I'll get these classes out of the way and then I'll have my whole day. It's like, you're not going to go to the 8 a.m.
I just didn't go.
Yeah.
And so it turned into that of like, I haven't go. I just even had a dream recently.
I was just about to bring up those nightmares.
I had a nightmare of like, I just wasn't going to class again. I'm like, I haven't been in college for so long.
Me too. I still have those nightmares that I wake up, like I'm in a class and I'm like, it's the final. And I'm like, I've never even been to this class a single day. Like, what are we doing? And I'm like freaking out. Then I wake up and I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't been in a classroom in 10 years.
I don't have to think about this. They have no power over me anymore. And so, and a lot of it was those classes that you had to take. And I think they called it like these core classes at the time. I think they dropped this since I was in school. I think they only did it for like while my 4 years in college. I think they started
it and then they're like, nah, this isn't working.
So you had to take these classes that were in subject matters that you weren't even involved with. So like no matter what you were, if you were in the arts and humanities, you had to take like a science class. Yeah. You had to take an English class. You had to take all these.
They did the same thing when I was in school because I was arts, political science. It was in the arts and letters building and most of it. And then I would remember going to like the science wing and I was like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yes. I had a geology class and I'm like, I started out in English, a history major for like that first semester. I'm like, I'm not doing this. Yeah. Then I went to English. So I have a minor in English. But then once I found psychology, everything clicked. I was like, this is, I'm breezing through this. This is great. And
then you're in like a trig class and you're like, I'm here because they said I had to be here. I don't know.
Well, I think partly.
What's with the symbols on the wall?
Yes. Partly why I did well in the psychology was I could just take psychology. I had gotten all of those prerequisites out of the way. And so I was I just remember being in a geology class and going, why am I in geology? Like, this is like hardcore science. Yeah. And I am not interested in that at all. Like, we had to take math, which was fine. I was always good in math, but it's like you had to take through like calculus. And so now I'm like, all right, now I've got to like go back and try to remember the math that, because I didn't even take math my senior year of high school.
So it's been years since you took it.
Yeah, because I had doubled up my junior year. I took 2 math classes my junior year of high school just to get out of the way. And so I took calculus for like a week in my senior year. I go, I don't need this. Yeah. I want to breeze through. So just all of that. Like and that's even thinking about for my daughter, she's only 4.5. I'm like, I want her to be able to feel passion about academics. And I think that comes from not just saying, you got to do all of this stuff. Because it's like, I think if you can get them to be interested and passionate, the way I'm about comedy. Yeah. Like once I found comedy, that was the other half of what I was doing with my time my freshman year when I got on academic probation was I would go to a few classes that weren't at 8 a.m. Whatever was like basically from 10 a.m.
10 to 4. 2. Yeah.
I'll go to those. And I would come home for lunch and I would sit and watch Comedy Central while I ate lunch and while I ate dinner. So it was like, I'm just watching Comedy Central and I am just playing basketball. Yeah. That was my entire life. And I didn't go drinking.
Did you drink at all when you were in college?
Probably had a couple drinks, at some point, but I've never been into it. Now, going back to my dad with the whole drinking thing is his dad was an alcoholic. Okay. And so regardless of like the churchy stuff, I think he would have been not into drinking because he saw what and my dad's the oldest of 3 siblings.
So he saw the worst of it.
He saw the worst and he was responsible for the family. He felt responsible. He wasn't responsible, but he felt responsibility over keeping the family together. And he never had that perfect relationship with his dad. His dad wasn't like a mean drunk. He just would disappear. Yeah. And so he saw how that affected his mom, and so we never had alcohol around us.
Okay. So it's interesting you bring this up because I've seen this go both ways where I've seen, because I talk about this in the one-man show that I'm running, but I've been in situations where, because I was straight edge all the way through almost high school. Like I didn't start drinking till almost the end of my senior year of high school because I saw what drinking did to people around me, whether it's, parents or siblings or anything. And I'd be like, oh, I don't want to like do that. Like they get out of control or they get loud or they'll just blatantly like say they're going to do something and then it never happens. And so I was like, oh, this alcohol, this seems like poison. And so I just didn't. But then because I suffered from such bad anxiety and depression and stuff, I remember the first time I had like 2 drinks and all of that went away. And I was like, no wonder everybody does this. But had it not been that point, I would have been in that same boat where you look around and you go, oh, this is terrible. Like this isn't for me. And I almost made it out unscathed. And then that one time I was at a party and I was like, I guess I'll have a drink. Because I was known as the kid who doesn't drink. And I was like, I guess I'll do it. And then I had like 1 or 2 shots, and I was like, ugh, this is amazing. And then it was,
got past that.
if I would have just gotten past that one point, I could have stuck with I'm the guy who doesn't drink. And now.
And this podcast would be very different right now.
Yeah, it would be very different.
It'd be all about academic success.
Yeah, I would have gone to law school, and I would have everything would have worked out totally different.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I did do that, and so I fell into that same, addictive behavior that runs in my family and stuff, and then I just kind of went down that whole rabbit hole. But for your father, he was just like, no, we're not doing it. We're not keeping it in the house. This isn't happening.
It didn't win in the house, and like I said, it was already in a conservative area.
Yeah, community.
In a community. So there wasn't a lot of drinking from anybody.
Yeah.
There was some people that would have a glass of wine, but it was like very rare. I don't even remember seeing anybody drink a glass of wine or even talk about drinking a glass of wine until maybe I was in high school.
Okay.
So it was that far into it. And, when you're in elementary school and even junior high, it's not like even the kids are really drinking or doing anything yet. Yeah. You'd have to be in a severely broken home.
We've had a couple of those comics on.
Yes. And there are. I mean, there certainly was troubled kids in my era. I don't know if they were drinking or anything. They didn't talk about. There's this kid. I've never been able to find him since, but there's Jimmy Norris. This was in elementary school. He was that kid where I'm like, I didn't recognize it at the time, but now I go, there must have been a lot of trouble at home.
Yeah.
This kid set the bathroom on fire in first grade. He was...
That's ballsy for a first grader.
He would have anger issues. He threw erasers across the room if he was told to go out in the hallway. And he was also the kid in gym class where he like tap you on the shoulder, go, hey, in the locker room, and you look down, and you go point down, and his penis is out of his shorts. He's pulled it through the leg of the short, and then he'd scream laughing and run out of the room. And I'm like, he clearly
tours the world now. He's a comedian.
Yeah, my guess is probably what happened is he ended up in prison or dead. Yeah. That's my guess of what happened.
Oh, probably.
I have never been able to find any records of him since then.
Even with Google and everything nowadays?
I have not found anything from him. So we were friends, like elementary school friends. Anyone in your class is pretty much your friend. Yeah. There's a little bit of like, I'm making fun of you type of thing because I was the fat kid. But generally speaking, people were friendly. Even if there was the cool kid and there was the,
You're still in the same class. And it's, even if the classes are big, they're still smaller classes.
Yes. It's not really to junior high that you have the full divide where
the cliques start forming.
Because now you have classes that you go to and you're not just we're in the same class with the numbers and the letters and the colors on the floor.
We do all 5 subjects together.
Yes. So there's kids like that. But just generally speaking, there wasn't a lot of that. And so the kids that I hung out with, a lot of times it was church friends. Yeah. And there was none of that. And so it wasn't until I got to college at Indiana University that even...
Yeah, because that's a big school. That's not a small private school.
Yeah, huge state school. And it's kind of a party school. Mm-hmm. That
most of those Midwest schools are.
Yes. They have a very large Greek system. Yeah. And at one point, a friend of mine wanted to be in a frat. I was not so much into it because I'm a weird dude anyway. Like, I think any comedian has a different relationship with society.
Yeah, 100%.
Than other people. So, like, I've always been a bit quiet. So, like, I would call myself, people are like, were you the class clown? It's like, I was the class clown's writer. Yeah. Like, just generally speaking, I would
do this.
I would say something like, I would say it to you and go, hey, this thing, or I'm trying to make you laugh. And then that you would say it out loud to everybody and get a laugh. And I was like, that's my joke. Yeah. Like, that kid's not smart enough or funny enough to think
that happens to me on social media all the time. As I'll walk by something and I go, oh, this would be like a funny reel or a TikTok. And I just won't do it. And then like a week later, I'll be scrolling and then I'll see someone doing the same thing. And I go, that was my fucking bit. That's my bit.
That could have been your bit, And so with that, like, even I remember getting my first big laugh out loud, because I was always the talker. They'd say, he's smart, but he doesn't apply himself, and he talks, and he does fine. But then the kids sitting next to him distract the other kids. And that's the way I always did it, was I was distracting the kids around me. But my first big all the class laughs was 6th grade. And 6th grade was still in elementary school when I went to school. They didn't bump that to middle school yet. And so our teacher was talking to us about drunk driving. And she's like, this, the horrors of drunk driving, and what are we at, 11, 12? Something like that. It's like we're not even thinking about driving or drinking. I don't know why we're learning about drunk driving, but okay, it's probably part of the health package or whatever to learn. And so she goes, do you really want your parents to have to identify body parts someday? And I just turned around in the seat behind me, and I grabbed my hand like this and kind of hit it behind the chair, and I go, is this your hand? And the entire class, boom, everybody laughed. Cool kids, everybody. And my teacher goes, look, I'm very disappointed in you. But I was like, but you can say that, and that's very parallel to what comedy can be, is like, if you get the laugh in the room, it doesn't matter if you have that one fringe person goes, I'm disappointed in what you said. Yeah. I already got the laugh.
It's over. I already got it.
Yeah.
So when you got to college, was that a completely different experience, or did you hang around people that were more of your mindset and stuff?
So at first,
because when you got there, I guess what I'm asking is, did you stay on campus? Did you have a random roommate? Like, how did all that work?
So my freshman year, I stayed in a dorm with a guy I knew in high school.
Okay.
And we got along very well our senior year of high school, and very well for probably the first semester and a half. Then I think we were just around each other too much or something like that. We had a falling out, and he basically has never spoken to me again.
Oh, wow.
And it's silly, like the kind of thing I had my feet up on his clean laundry or something like that, and he got very upset about that and just never spoke to me again. But this is another story where, kind of like the Jimmy Norris story, where it's like looking back, I think I see what more of the issues were going on than I know could possibly understand at the time. So senior year, everybody said that he was gay. And he was like, I'm not gay. I'm not gay. And he said that until somewhere mid-college. And then he came out as gay.
Yeah.
And people were saying in high school, he's in love with you. He's in love with you. And I go, that's, the way I think is just like, I don't believe anything anybody says about anything unless I see it for myself. And so I think it is possible. I don't know that he had any feelings for me, but I think we had this friendship for sure. And that friendship, he felt upset that we were not maybe connecting the way we had connected in high school friendship wise. Like now he's making some other friends and I'm making some other friends. And he never felt close enough to me to say, I'm gay.
Yeah. And
so I don't know. I've thought back, like, did I say anything that could have hurt his feelings in that way? I don't remember that. But it's, I was 17, 18 years old. I might have said something stupid or insensitive, not knowing.
And then he just bottled all that up, and then it just came out, and he just left.
And so, we've spoken on Facebook since then, but nothing
ever.
Just more pleasantries.
Yeah.
I just wanted him to know that, as far as I'm concerned, we're still friends, and whatever.
Yeah.
And so
that you said that was the first semester and a half?
That was freshman year. We were roommates, and so. He is the one that advised me not to take Italian when I was like, I want to learn Italian. He goes, no. Because I tried to take French because I had a girlfriend at the time that spoke French. And I was like, I'll just learn French. And I just absolutely miserable student in that. And he goes, take German. Yeah. So I can
because French, Italian, and Spanish are all based in Latin.
Yes. And he was a very good language student. And he goes, take German. So I can thank him for that, of getting an A in German. Rooted in the, he's for sure helped me get my grades up by going, take German.
Yeah.
All right. And so that was my freshman year. Then my sophomore year, my first semester, I was in a different dorm with just some random guy.
What was that like? Were they like, because I know when I got to my public university, it was like go time. As soon as I got there, it's like, we're partying. So when you get placed with a random person your sophomore year, are they like ripping and rolling, or are they?
It was weird. I feel like his name was Tate or something like that. But he also, I thought, I just got paired up with an old dude. And the way that dorm was new, and so we had a shared bathroom in between two rooms instead of having like one shared room and that we both slept in. We each got our own little room and then shared a bathroom. And we almost did nothing together.
Okay, so because you were kind of separated by that bathroom, you guys just never really saw each other.
And I was also like, I I felt like he was so old. I was like, this old dude.
What was he, 22?
He was maybe 22 or 23. He was like just a few years older. But like I said earlier, when you have 2 years separated when you're young, it feels like these people are ancient. So,
I always feel like my older sister's like way older than me and closer to my brother. She's actually 2 years older than me and 4 years younger than my brother.
Yes.
But in my head, it's like, oh no, you and Ryan are closer in age.
Yes.
But it's like, no, it's not.
It makes no sense how the child brain works with that stuff. And so after that, and I felt isolated there. I was like, oh, I don't like this. And so there was a house. So I was part of a church group, like a campus church group. And they had a house for guys that just, like not really a frat house, but smaller. They do have a frat house now, like that size. But at the time, it was just like 8 of us living in a house. Yeah. So I moved in there, and that was great because then I had friends, not just like Tate over there. Why is this 24-year-old just sitting in his room all day? It's like weird. And
he's doing heroin. That's what heroin does to you, Luke.
Yeah, he did have like I don't know what they are. They're steer antlers or horns on his wall. He was like a fake cowboy. And
good old country boy.
Yes. And I was just like, I don't know how I got paired up with him. So
because then you go into the church house. So you literally almost had gone your entire college career unscathed from like partying and debauchery and all that.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yes. And
you went to a huge party school in the Midwest.
Yes.
And didn't touch it.
No, not really. Like I think I had a drink maybe once.
That's what I'm saying. That speaks to an incredible, like, I don't know if it's self-will or just.
There's luck involved. There's also like, going back to me being weird, is that I've never, if I don't click with something right away and I see it as weird or dumb, it's hard to change my opinion.
Yeah.
And so like when I'm drinking, it's like I already have a lot of fun stuff going on in my brain. Like I entertain myself. I've always been very imaginative. I can, I worked on a loading dock in high school at Sears. And I would just keep a notebook and I'd be writing ideas to myself.
See, so you were way out in front of it as far as, because there are just the things I've learned in rehab and detoxes and going to jail and everything like that. It's that like a lot of that stuff you were doing in high school is stuff that they tell you to do as an adult. Like, because not only comedians, but addicts, I know also, we always have like our brains are always on, which is why we use, because it's a way to shut it off. And also for comedians, your brain is always on. You're always writing. Like I love Lenny Bruce, and that's the last line of his book is, how do you write? And he goes, I'm always writing, or I'm always observing. And so for you, you were way out in front of it. You were journaling and writing stuff down and taking notes way before everybody.
Yeah, I didn't think about it at the time for sure. And I was writing ideas that were really probably more film type of ideas. I hadn't, when I said show business didn't seem real, I didn't know comedy would be an option until I went to my first open mic as an audience member.
Was this in college?
This was just after graduation.
Okay.
And well, yeah, shortly after graduating, maybe it was a year or two, but a friend of mine who is a good friend from high school and college, we were roommates in college my senior year at that house.
Yeah.
His sister was doing comedy, and she invited us to go to the open mic. And she seemed way older too. She was probably 3 years older than us, but she seemed ancient. And we went and watched, and she was not good. But at the end of it, they go, if anybody wants to sign up for this, they can. And that's where the light bulb went on. And it was like, wait a second. I could try this.
Yeah.
I can try stand-up comedy. And so we signed up as a duo, my friend and I, and it just never, he's chickened out.
Yeah.
So,
but you went.
But I went, and I've never stopped going since then.
That's awesome.
Never stopped since then. And so I've had that. So once I get locked into something like that, and this is kind of even when I was talking about, I want my daughter to be passionate about, I am passionate about comedy.
Yeah.
And I love it. And there's things I look back on my life and I go, oh, this is pretty wild, that things like, like working on the loading dock, writing ideas, seeing Cosby or Seinfeld, or, Chris Farley was a, comedic influence, but he's not a stand-up comic. feeling like this huge love and connection to that stuff. Then, you know, seeing Harlan Williams in Dumb and Dumber, and then seeing him in real life, all of these things connecting and going, yes, I'm all in on this thing.
So you went 1 year and then you moved to New York.
Yep.
And then once you get to New York, you said it took you you said 5 or 6 years into comedy. So I'm assuming 4 to 5 years into New York, you were like, okay, I've got to dedicate to one thing.
Yes. Because I was doing Upright Citizens Brigade Theater here. I was doing a show that in a coffee shop with my wife, where we would switch off and one person would kind of host the show doing stand-up and one person would do characters, do sketches. We'd do sketches together. Did videos, that kind of stuff.
So you've been with your wife for a while now, too.
Yeah, I met her that first year of comedy. She was doing an open mic.
God, that's awesome.
I saw her first time doing stand-up. I had been doing it 6 months, and I thought I knew everything after 6 months. And I watched her very first time, and it was incredibly depressing because she was so good. And I was like,
oh, okay.
That was the depressing part. Was like, I thought I was getting good, and I watched her do her very first time, and I was like, she's better than me, and it's her first time. And there was something about that of going, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. and there's there's a lot of stories about that stuff.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and so in all of this, and being now, you know, I'm an adult in this, even being around comedy, it's like I just didn't drink. I have not done drugs. It just not that they have not been around or not.
No, yeah, because that's what I wanted to get into now is just because we've got about 10, 12 minutes left. I wanted to talk to you about, because now you're at the Cellar quite often and you're around some of, like you said, the most famous comics in the world, and some of them like to drink and imbibe and party. I mean, it's well documented in other things, so we won't get into it here. But what is that like for you? Is it because as a sober person, I've been sober long enough now, and I've gone through enough bottoms and stuff, and I do the stuff I need to do to stay sober. So when I'm around it, it literally, like, it doesn't bother me because it's like that's like I'm so disconnected from it. And there are some days where it does bother me, and then I just don't go out. But for you, just because it's never even been a part of your life, is it just like something you don't even see?
It's
not don't see, but you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't register in your head?
Yeah, it's something that doesn't ever appealed to me. It's kind of like if you didn't grow up eating monkey brains, like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and somebody in your 30s goes, hey, you want to eat this? You're like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Because you've just gotten so used to not doing it.
Yes. And so, you know, I see maybe it's because my dad kind of instilled the consequences, but we didn't even talk about it until I was in high school or college that he even talked about his dad with that stuff. I just knew that I barely even knew that grandpa. He died on my 10th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the entire extent of knowing him would have been the 2 trips that we made to Ohio to see him per year.
Yeah.
So at 10, I'd seen him maybe 20 times in my life, something like that. And that's accounting, you take away half of that.
First 5 years where you don't even know what's going on.
So maybe 10 times I've seen him in my life. And so, consequences, I'm able to see consequences.
I was just about to say, you're very good with I'm of the belief where it's like, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And then I just keep burning myself. And then eventually I'm like, maybe I should stop doing this. But you're very good at, like, if someone says, don't touch that stove, it's hot, you'll get close to it and be like, yeah, that's kind of hot. I don't want to touch that.
Yes.
And that's that. I'm envious of that. That's something genuinely, because there's so much stuff in my life that would have gone differently if I would have just listened to people be like, hey, don't do that, asshole. And I would have been like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And we all have our things. It's not like I'm flawless and I don't do things over and over and over again that are destructive to myself. But like that's particularly one where it never, and I don't know, maybe the addictive gene is in my, body and my DNA. And so I don't even really want to kick it in.
Yeah.
Because I am like, food is a big thing. Where it's like, as a fat kid, I fluctuate in weight.
Yeah, me too,
stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I have that problem with sugar and chocolate and things like that, I can only imagine that it'd probably just double down if it was drugs and alcohol, that I'd probably have much bigger
Yeah, because I know Dane Cook has talked about that before, where there's addiction in his family, so he just never touches it.
Yeah.
And he's just never touched it, and that's something too. It's interesting because like I said earlier, had it become one of those things where I just was never if I just was like, oh, this is dangerous and just never touched it, like obviously lives are completely different.
Yeah.
Almost my entire set, my whole life now is predicated on all the dumb stuff I did because I was drinking.
Yeah.
Whether it's hospitals or rehabs or jails, like that's all because of alcohol.
Yeah.
And how much different my life would have been without it. And I don't know. I've had a lot of people on this podcast and we've had stories, Caitlin Plufo talked about getting arrested in Mexico. Steven Rogers talked about walking over to a stretcher when they called the ambulance on him. I've had all sorts of people on. Josh Adam Myers talked about his 2 DUIs, 3 DUIs.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting. I love having someone on who's kind of like, yeah, you see all that destructive shit? I just was like, I don't want it.
I know. I don't want it. Like when I was in high school, this is like the weirdest example of something that I saw like, oh, I don't want this. My dad drove a Chrysler Sebring convertible at the time.
Okay.
Oh, real hot stuff.
Yeah.
Especially for Indiana. But he would let me drive it occasionally. And so I drove it. I was driving a friend home. And there was 3 of us in the car. And we were driving by and we saw 2 guys pushing their car. Like, oh, it's ran out of gas or they're broken down. And we go, we should go help them. And just keep in mind, we're actually probably in college at that point. So we're probably, 20 years old.
Yeah. So you and 2 buddies.
Yes. And so we flip around and they had pushed into an elementary school parking lot. And so somebody else had stopped to help them too. And when you come up on a scene and you see the response of somebody that is observing what's happening and you're like, something's off here. Because they're looking at the whole scene like they look a little scared and a little nervous. And so the 2 guys that are pushing the car, we just come by and we go, hey, is there anything we can do to help you guys? And they didn't say anything. And one of the guys just passes out slowly, just rolls to the ground, and the car rolled over his head. And we were like, whoa. And like the people that had already stopped to see if they needed help, they go, we're out. And they just drove away. And we go, hey, there's a firehouse.
Like it rolled onto his head?
The tire went boop, boop over his head like a speed bump. And he popped up immediately.
Okay, so it didn't crush his head.
No, it didn't crush his head. He popped up immediately. He's bleeding some.
Yeah.
But he pops up immediately and just goes, oh, I'm fine. But he's got blood coming out. We go, bro, we just saw your head get run over by a car. There's a firehouse that is right next door to the elementary. Can we just tell them to, get you
come help? Yeah.
Come help. And this is how I knew drugs or alcohol had to be involved because he goes, no cops.
Okay.
And it was like, because we're like, we can call 911, whatever, no cops, and we go, okay. And he's walking towards us and we're like, he looked like a zombie the way he was like shuffling along, like, don't call the cops. And, and the other guy was slurring his words too. So it's like they were either on drugs or they were committing some sort of DUI and they didn't want that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so we go, okay, no problem. We'll
got
leave.
In the car and left.
And so we left. A couple blocks later, this is the far east side of Indianapolis where there's a lot of, cop happenings going on anyway. We saw a police officer and we go, hey, excuse me, officer. He's in the street with a light and he pulled somebody over and he goes, hey, get out of here. Get out of here. And we go, well, hold on. Like, can we just tell you what we just saw? And he goes, what is it?
East side in Indiana. What?
Yeah, it is totally every interaction I've had with an Indiana police officer, it tends to go something like this, where they got a little too much power. They're like a combination of In Heat of the Night and Barney Fife, where it's like they got too much power and they're ready to show it, but they also are fumbling and bumbling. And so he goes,
it's a perfect way. Yeah. In the Heat of the Night with Barney Fife.
Yes. And he's like, he goes, first of all, I just want to tell you this. You might have just run over some important evidence right now. So what is it that was so important that you needed to tell me this? And we go, we just saw a guy's head get run over. Like a car ran over his head 2 blocks away. And he goes, I'll call it in. Now get out of here. And so, and what he was doing, probably, because it was a car full of black people, they probably threw out a joint out the window or something like that, and he was looking for it. Because you're not looking for a gun in the middle of the street. You're not looking for any.
He's just hassling these guys.
He's just hassling them. At best, it was a joint or something they threw out the window. That's at best. And that's what was so important for him to take care of instead of the person that was full,
that got run over.
And so, and when we went back to my friend's house, we called 911. We go, hey, this police officer said he was going to report this, but we thought we should at least check.
Barney Fife said he was going to call it in.
Barney Fife said he's going to call it in. And so they said, nope, we have no reports of that. And I go, well, this is what happened and where it was. And so that also let me just a little slice into like what the policing might be like there on that side of town. But just seeing like all of that, you don't want to trust yourself in the situations of.
So that was a really big, that was like I've made the right decision.
Yes. Yeah. Because you can't trust yourself in that, but you also can't even trust authorities to help you and people that might want to try to help you. Like me and my friends, we weren't in a position that we felt safe even to help this person. And
because I've had that before where people have been like super intoxicated when I lived in apartment complexes, like in Florida, because you can just walk into and I've had people like banging on my door and I've opened it and they're hammered and they're like, this is my friend's house. And I'm like, no, buddy. Like, I've been in the spot where it's like, well, I don't want to call the police because I've been in this situation.
Yeah.
But it's also like, you're not coming in my apartment.
Yeah.
Like, I'll throw you down the stairs. Like, you're not coming in. So I completely understand like seeing that and you're like, I don't know what to do. And the person in that situation has no idea what's going on. And it's like, do you see that? Because you do host one of the show. We were talking about the show at the Cellar. Do you see that a lot in New York as far as because the Cellar is kind of the club, obviously, in the world. So do you see that with audience members? Like, are you constantly reminded like, oh, this is why I don't do this? Like with hammered audience members and stuff?
There's people who because when people get super hammered, I'm like, I can't even put myself in the mind space of why that would be fun.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're stumbling around. They are falling on their face sometimes or passing out. Ambulance have to come take people away. At the Cellar, this is a few months ago, and Aziz Ansari was on stage. I was hosting, so I wasn't in the room when I introduced Aziz, and then I left because when you're hosting, you have to like go out to the room, you have to like find the next comic, you have to figure out the timing of what's going on, and I come back in, and Aziz is talking to somebody, and all the bouncers are in there.
Okay. Yeah, that's the other thing about the Cellar that a lot of the clubs in New York don't have. The Cellar has security.
Yes. And
they're massive.
Yes.
King is gigantic.
Yes, he is. These are big dudes. Like
I'm a big guy and I see King and I'm like, nah, man, you're good.
No, because like I said, I'm 6'2", and these guys dwarf me.
Yeah.
Like they are probably the smallest of the bouncers is probably 6'2", 6'3", and like 350.
Yeah, 350. Yeah.
They're big boys. And they will, but they're the friendliest guys unless they need to. And I've never actually seen them have to like physically get with anybody.
So, in all the time you've been at the Cellar, you've never actually seen them physically remove somebody?
No, I've seen them like say, "Come with me," and usually, I think just a big presence, people go, "Okay,
I'm coming with you."
I'm coming with you. Well, this was a woman who, when I was hosting up top, I was like, "I can tell you're going to be a little bit of an issue."
You can see it.
You can just see a little bit. Well, they were all around her, and they were not trying to physically remove her yet. And like even the club manager and everything was in the room. And
is Aziz still talking?
Aziz is talking to her, going, "Why are you still here?" And so she had been asked to leave. She must have been heckling. And the policy there is at the Cellar, you heckle once the servers come around and say, "No more talking." If you do it again, you're gone.
Yeah.
Basically.
There's almost a zero tolerance for it.
And so she was
first. You get the friendly server, like, "Hey, don't do that," and then you get King.
Then you get King. Right. And so they were like sitting there and not saying anything and not moving. But she was definitely I don't think it was alcohol. I think it was some sort of drug.
Yeah.
Because the way that she was acting was not just like alcohol does to somebody. Because usually alcohol, when somebody gets drunk, they get loud.
Yeah,
belligerent. And you can't, don't touch me and all this. And she was just sitting very still, and very quiet. And they were like, come with us, ma'am. Come with us. And she just was shaking her head no. Mm-mm. Like she was almost catatonic except for shaking her head no.
Wow.
And Aziz like, why are you doing this? You're making it so weird. You're still here. And this goes on for like 10, 15 minutes of them like trying to get her out. And then at some point she goes, I'm sorry that I ruined your whole thing. I'm sorry I made it, just breaking down. And this is kind of important for the story, is that she's a white woman.
Yeah.
Okay. And so she might be getting away with some stuff that maybe you wouldn't in society if you weren't a white woman. And so my wife is black, by the way. And so when I told her this story about because they eventually got the woman to go.
Yeah.
But it was 10 or 15 minutes.
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
That's a set.
Yes. And I'm actually was surprised. And Aziz was amazing with it.
Of course.
Amazing with her. Also amazing getting the room back. It was just, he did a great job with it all. But
he's a professional.
He's absolutely professional. But just watching somebody like completely humiliate themselves. And she was crying like, I'm sorry, I embarrassed myself. But it's like, just leave.
You're making it way worse.
And Aziz was saying like, he goes, it's okay. Just go.
Yeah.
It'll be better if you just go.
Yeah.
Instead of making the scene. And so my wife is black. When she heard this whole story, she goes, she turned that into her being the victim.
Yeah.
So with the crime.
Your wife's dead on. That's a great point.
She's used to that as a white woman in this world. You just turn it back on them.
Yeah.
I'm the victim here.
I ruined your show. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm sad.
Now you're yelling at me.
Now you have me crying.
Yes, I'm getting kicked out. I'm embarrassed. You did this to me, type of thing. And it's like, no, your behavior instigated all of this. And we're just going through the protocols. And so, that's one of the more recent ones. I mean, God, I see people get kicked out all the time. And
have you ever been like, hey, out of here?
No.
I was so hoping.
No, because I don't feel like I have that power.
Yeah. Well, and as the host too, you don't want to divide the room as like, oh, we thought we were having fun and now this guy's kicking people out.
Yes.
That's why it's good to leave it to the servers and to the
That's great there. Now, I have had places where I have to shut people down more. But in general, I think the weirdest it has ever even gotten like at the Cellar is like me as host going, all right, guys, I know you're talking and you're,
having a good
time, think you're being part of this. But what's going to happen is if you keep doing that, they're going to kick you out. And I don't want that to happen for you.
Yeah, you're the good guy. Yeah. I don't want to see that happen.
So don't do that anymore. And that usually gets nothing, just kind of brings the whole room down. But then I got to get it back. So the best case scenario usually is for let the servers, because the servers are usually on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
If something like that has happened, it's because they are running to get the drinks and they just happen to not be right there at that moment.
Yeah, because they're very good too. Because I've been with people where they get a little loud and the server will just come by and be like, okay.
Yeah.
And then we're like, all right. Because I'll be like, shut the fuck. Like, don't embarrass me. Like, I do shows here. Like, don't fucking embarrass me.
Yes.
Because like when my girlfriend has friends in town, they always want to go to the Cellar. And Liz, love her to death. I know her from other stuff. And she, a lot of times she'll take care of us and stuff. And so when I go there and her friends have a couple of drinks and then they want to get loud, I'm like, you better like my dad used to say when we go into parties, you better not fucking embarrass me right now. Because I have to work with these people. But the servers are very good about being like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw it with, Chris Rock was on stage last night and somebody was shouting out something to him and they immediately went over. Now, he was still asking them like, what is it you want? He goes, let them answer this one question.
Yeah.
Because he knows the policy too of just going like, I know that they've shut you down already and you literally are afraid to answer this because you're thinking
you're going to get kicked out. Yeah.
But we're all in agreement. You can answer this question. And so she answered it and then he had his jokes ready, prepped for that. But like, yeah, it is an interesting, because certainly that is not true of a lot of places. And that is not the trend online right now.
No,
Instagram is to show just the heckling.
Yeah, I know. And you and I wish we had more time, but we are coming to the end. But you and I talked about that. And that's actually the conversation we had is something I bring up to people still that was a couple weeks ago, but still I bring it up all the time. Any chance I get when I'm talking to other comics about stuff they're putting online, I'm like, you understand we're inviting, like they'll be like, I can't believe that person shouted out. And I go, we're inviting this with everything that we post. Is destroy heckler gets shut down, crazy heckler. I'm like, we're doing this to ourselves.
Yeah.
And they're always like, well, I never thought about it like that. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah, because you don't see the consequences, but I do. I can see consequences ahead of time, and I don't want to be entering that behavior.
Call back like a professional. Plug everything one more time. Your social media, your album, the whole thing.
Everything at Comedian Luke on all social media platforms, and also Comedian Luke at Gmail. If you want a book, if you want to just chat, if you want to buy an album, and I mail to you and send. We can do all of that stuff.
Perfect. Thank you again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
At Brennan T Comedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. One-man show is coming in January, so keep your eyes out for that. And we will talk to y'all next week.